guys, I'm Zach and welcome back to Workshop Edits. In today's project, I'm going to take you through how I built a bench for this little one's nursery. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we are here in the shop. I got my plywood sheet behind me. This is a relatively straightforward project. It's kind of just like a box with a bunch of cubbies. So we're just going to begin breaking down all the material. We're going to use the circular saw just to get started, make it a little bit more manageable for one person, and then cut everything down to size on the table saw. Let's get started. So we just finished cutting the pieces. It was a little bit complicated when you're just handling a big sheet of plywood and cutting big pieces by yourself. I'm also not a very big person, I guess. All right, so the next thing we're doing now, we got 6 small panels cut, which are going to be our vertical pieces, and we got the tops and bottoms cut here. We're going to just use pocket holes to assemble this. This is going to be in a corner of the room, and so you're really only ever going to see it from one side. So what I'm going to do is cut the pocket holes and then position it so that all of them are facing away from when you enter the room, so you'll be able to see them if you look really closely from the other way, but this way it just looks nice and clean, and it's a really easy solution because it's just, it's like a functional storage bench type thing.
"24 hours later."
All right, so it is the next day. I had to stop working entirely yesterday because I experienced my first true kickback. Long story short, I was cutting a spacer block, which you can see here, and I'm going to use that spacer block to evenly space out the vertical walls. I was pushing it. I must have been pushing it through slightly unevenly, and so as I was pushing it kind of along the wall, it tended to want to get stuck, shoot across, and you can just see it dug into this piece, and it threw it back at me at like 130, 140 miles per hour right into my gut, and that was about like top 3 most painful things of my life. I'm fine for the most part. I have a huge cut, and it's bruised, and I'm going to have an imprint of plywood on me probably for the next month. I feel good enough to start working, but man, that was scary, and it's a good lesson or reminder of safety. So I'm going to try to get back into it. We're just going to be using the pocket hole screws to start attaching to each of these pieces that we have. I did cut a spacer again to make them all even. We got some stuff 3D printed in the background that I'll talk about in a little bit, and then I'm just going to see how I feel and try to work through this project without overdoing it. So yeah, everybody stay safe. All right, so we just finished completing the carcass of this thing. Pretty straightforward. Just wanted to make sure that all of these were evenly spaced out. One little quick tip for using pocket holes is whenever you do it, you find that you line it up, and if you don't have it clamped down, it shifts by like a millimeter, and it's really annoying. So what I found is if you just run a few pin nails or brad nails into it, it's going to lock that piece in place temporarily with a little bit of glue. Then when you come back and add the pocket hole screws, nothing's going to shift on you, and you end up with something that's nice and straight, and you have nice 90-degree perpendicular angles. So now that that is done, we're going to do 2 different things. So first, let's head over to the 3D printer. All right, so we're over at my 3D printer station. You've probably seen me use the Adventure 3 from Flash Forge in some of my build videos and on social media. I just got this Adventure 4 from Flash Forge. They were cool enough to send it to me. They're not paying me to say this. They're just like, hey, do you want to test it out? We know you like 3D printing. So overall, I absolutely love this thing. If you are at all interested in getting into 3D printing, I love this printer. This one is like twice as big. It prints like 75% faster. It has a build area that's about 3 inches in every direction bigger, which is awesome if you're trying to build things that are bigger than the 6x6x6 platform. It's super quiet. It connects over Wi-Fi. it's enclosed. The enclosed thing I think is huge for people who are in woodworking but want to get into 3D printing, because you can just see how much wood dust eventually gathers on this thing, and you don't have to worry about the actual build area in here getting dirty. And so my wife wanted this thing to be super functional. She's like, I just want it to sit on the ground. I don't want it to have any legs and just have this kind of overly modern feel. The nursery that we have doesn't have that. I personally like to have my pieces sit just slightly off the ground. It just looks nicer in my opinion. So the compromise we came up with, or I came up with, was just printing these little tiny feet. So again, I hopped into Blender, I prototyped some of these feet, and they're gonna work out perfectly because it's just gonna give the bench this little kind of floating look to it. You won't even really be able to see them, but I just think it's gonna look nicer, and that way you don't have just this big wooden carcass sitting on our wooden floor, and that way if it gets moved around, you can put some furniture pads on the bottom and it's not gonna ruin your floor. So compromise with the wife, and a really fun opportunity to use brand new printer. Highly recommend this one. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you're at all interested in learning more about it or just interested in getting into 3D printing. So with that said, let's hop back over to the piece. So that we have these feet figured out, what I'm gonna do is go back to the computer, drop 8 of them into the software for it and print them. It's probably gonna take like 12 hours just because I'm printing them with PETG filament, which just prints at a higher temperature. It prints slower, but it's stronger. It's gonna look a little bit nicer. I have some white filament, so it's, again, it's like, if you're not gonna be able to see them, but it just aesthetically, it's gonna bring all of this together. All right, so now that the feet are settled, one other thing I wanna do is add some hardwood edge banding to the front of this. So when you walk into the room, the piece is gonna be sitting up against this wall in this back corner. So what I did was I angled all the pieces with the pocket holes facing this way, so when you walk into the room, you're never gonna see them. In hindsight, it was kind of dumb of me to put this one facing inward. For some reason, I thought if I ever wanted to turn this around, at least the outsides of it are clean, but that doesn't actually make any sense because then you're gonna see all the pocket holes from this way. So if you are rebuilding this, just plan where it's gonna be in your space and put it so all your pocket holes are facing another way. I could plug these, I don't know, I don't really care. But because it is gonna be seen from this way, usually I like exposed plywood. I think it looks really cool if done properly, but I don't know, I have maple, this is maple plywood or maple veneer plywood. I just think it's gonna look really nice if I do that. So we're gonna head over to the table saw and we are gonna do that. This plywood is 1/2 inch thick or just underneath it, so we're gonna cut some strips that way, one for the top and bottom, and then 6 of them to go across, and then just hold those in place with some glue and brad nails, and I think it's gonna look really, really good. We'll come back and fill in those holes later with just a little bit of wood filler, and then sand this thing down, and it'll be ready for finish. Let's do it. All right, so that wraps up the build part of this thing. Really happy with how this came out. I know it's simple, but sometimes just simple and clean looks really good. So the last thing we want to do is just try to match the aesthetic of the wood a little bit to some of the furniture that's already in the nursery. So we painted the dresser, which we got from Ikea, and then did some Ikea hacks to it. This kind of off-white color, so we're gonna whitewash some paint and paint down the plywood of this. You'll still be able to see the grain through it, but I think it's gonna look really awesome. It's just gonna match the aesthetic of the room. My wife is gonna do that, and while she does that, I also just wanted to show you, these are the baskets that we got. We got these from Ikea too. They're like a 1 foot by 13 inches tall, and we got 5 of them, and so those are gonna fit in between all the cubbies that we've done. And then just aesthetically, I think it's gonna look really awesome. So she's gonna finish up painting, then we're gonna call this project wrapped up and get it in place. All right, so that is gonna wrap it up for this project. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Pretty simple and straightforward, but added a whole lot of functionality and storage to this space. I also want to point out it's been 3 weeks since I had that kickback issue, and I am still recovering from it, so please woodwork safely. If you enjoyed the video, just let me know by hitting that like button, but do it quietly because this one's sleeping, and I'll see you guys next time on whatever it is that I'm building. It's probably not going to be another kid though.